Okay, we are recording.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Gretchen Bliss, and I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Programs here at UCCS. And we are very excited to present this series over the next 6 months because we have a grant that we work cooperatively with the School of Business for faculty development. And we have found that there's a great interest in grad students and people in industry to come into being faculty at a university. And in cybersecurity, that's so important because we have lots of people who have experience, but maybe haven't done teaching and those sorts of things. So a lot of this is universal. To come into faculty, you can do this in any discipline, but the money that's provided to us in this particular initiative is for kind of that cybersecurity piece. So if you're not cyber, that's okay. We love having you here. You're going to learn about how to become a faculty member in any way, shape, and form. And so we're really excited to have you here today to learn about all the different aspects of that. So this is a monthly series that's going to be going through June. And we would just love to have you guys attend. And if you find something interesting, invite someone, or if you hear that someone's interested in this, please pass that on so that we can build the conversation as we move through each of the months. So there's all discrete elements that we're going to approach on this. And we just look forward to having you here to learn. And please feel free with each speaker at the end to ask questions or use the chat. So welcome, and we will get started. Over to you, Megan.
Oh, yep. Well, no, just love having you all here. My name is Megan Stood. I'm the Assistant Dean for External Relations in the College of Business, and the Faculty Development Grant falls under the College of Business. Michael Hellman works with me on that grant. So we are just very excited to have you all here. Michael's waving to get you started on how to build a CV. So we have partnered with our campus career center, and we have Kenner from who will be introducing herself here in a moment, and she's going to walk us through the process of what you all should do with your CV. So Kenner, I'm going to pass it on over to you to get started.
Hi everyone, my name is Kenner. I'm a peer career advisor at the UCCS Career Center. Today I'm just going to be walking you through building a CV, some things you can include, some things that you don't want to include, as well as some tips and tricks. So I'm going to take a second here to share my screen, and then we can get started. Alrighty, hopefully everyone can see that. If you can't see it, please let me know either in the chat or just say something to me. But feel free to interrupt at any time. I'm just going to go through this. If you have any questions, please let me know. So we're just going to begin with what we're going to include in a CV, when we're going to use it, and where it's going to be applicable. So to start us off, a CV stands for Curriculum Vitae, which is Latin for course of life. It is a comprehensive statement of your educational background, teaching, and research experience. It's the standard representation of credentials within academia. There's a nice quote from Mitchell Prinstein, who's a PhD. He describes a CV as a thorough, exhaustive account of professional experiences, honors, and activities, and anything that speaks to one's professional experience. So we're going to start out thinking about what kind of jobs ask for a CV. In the United States, it's mostly academic, educational, scientific, medical, or research positions. So in the case of becoming faculty, a CV is going to be necessary. It's also applicable if you're applying for any fellowships or grants that would require it. So check for that when you're applying for these and see if they require a CV to be submitted. Outside of the US, though, a CV is actually required to be submitted over a traditional resume like it is here. So if you're ever considering moving out of the country and applying for a new job for any position, really, you're going to want to have a CV instead of a resume. So there's a couple of differences between a CV and a resume. Typically, a resume will have your name and contact information, an unrequired summary of qualifications or an objective statement, your education and work experience, and any relevant skills, whereas the references will be included on a separate document. Although with a CV, there's going to be more information included. So your name and contact info, areas of interest, education, grants, honors and awards, publications and presentations, employment and experience, scholarly or professional memberships, as well as references. So that'll all be on one document. A couple of things to consider if you do apply for a CV internationally. Depending on the country that you are going to, a lot of information is going to be required that isn't usually depicted in a traditional CV. So that could be your nationality, marital status, your age, your number of children, any personal interests. And if for whatever reason you're applying for a modeling agency or for an actor, that would be also including any professional headshots. So just keep those in mind, although most of this information is not typical of a CV, especially in the United States. So the biggest thing that I try to emphasize when you are considering starting to write a CV is doing your research before. So looking at the jobs you are interested in for your career, looking at what descriptions they have for your requirements and duties, as well as any hard skills in the industry that you want to go into. Those are going to be key components of your CV that will help you get farther, as well as get more chances at interviews, because it'll show that you have a lot of relevant skills, as well as relevant experience in the job that you are wanting to go into. And we're going to emphasize that a lot throughout the presentation. So keep that in the back of your head. The general CV advice that I have for you is just going to include the fact that the CV is usually for only applying for academic positions. You do not need a CV if you're applying for community college. You definitely want to tailor your CV for the certain positions that you're interested in. So having a master document and then changing little pieces of information for each job you apply for is going to be super important. The format of a CV can really vary by field. So I would recommend seeking advice from any advisors, professors, or other people you may know that are in the field already, just to see kind of what their advice is on developing a CV and what that possible formatting could look like for you. Another nice thing about CVs, which is definitely outside of the realm of a resume, is that there is no length restriction for a CV. So you could write 25 pages or you could write 3 pages. It really just depends on how much information and experience you want to share about yourself. So keep that in mind as well. If you have a lot of volunteership or work experience or educational research, you can put all of that in without having to worry about a page cap. Additionally, the T. Rowe Price Career and Innovation Center does do CV critiques. So if you ever need extra support on writing a CV, getting a CV checked before submitting it for a job posting, or even getting it tailored, we offer those services to you to kind of give you some extra help and support if you need it. So there are 6 main things you want to consider when you're developing your CV structure. The first is that you want it to be well organized and easy to read, both for your employer as well as for yourself, in case you ever need to make changes to the document. Additionally, you'll want to choose an effective format and be consistent with that formatting throughout. If you only have 3 pages for a CV, you'll want to make sure that the header will stay the same for each. The font, the text size, all of that stuff wants to stay consistent. And it'll be even more relevant if you're writing a CV that's longer than that page length. Additionally, you can use bolds, italics, underlines, and capitalization for organizational purposes. We are going to take a look at a couple of example CVs today, so you can kind of get an idea of the different formats out there, as well as different organizational methods. So the bolds and italics do come in a lot. And anytime you're listing any sort of job experience or even like research studies you may have done, you'll want to make sure that you put the dates of those in reverse chronological order. So the position you may hold right now will go at the top, and any past positions are going to go back in time up until a certain date, depending on the relevancy of your position. Another thing to remember is that you want to place most of your important information near the top or left side of your document. And that will help it stick out, especially if employers are looking for specific things that you have experience within. And this is also very relevant if you're going to have a longer CV. Create a footer with page numbers and your last name, just in case there's any mix-up in the order of your CV, and the employers are able to kind of see how to fix that if that is a problem. So we're going to start with the required information that needs to be on a CV, as long as it's relevant. That is going to include a heading, education, relevant experience, publications, presentations, honors and awards, as well as your references. The heading is the most simple part of the document. You're just going to put your full name, your email address, your mailing address, and your phone number at the top. You'll want to make sure that your name is the biggest text in that section, because that's what's going to make it stand out the most. And then anything below that, you're going to want to put in smaller font. But all of this information is good because it's your contact information. It's how employers are going to reach you. So keep in mind just those elements there. That'll be for every heading. But the organization and format is really up to you. The only thing to keep in consistent is your name at the top. The next section we're going to talk about is education. So you're going to want to list your academic degrees in progress or completed, the name of your institution, where that institution is located, so city and state, your degree type, and your major, as well as either the year you graduated or the month and year you plan to graduate. If you are in a PhD program or even a master's program, you can place your thesis title as well as members of the committee underneath. In this example here, you can see that. So this example shows someone who has a PhD in English. They went to the University of Illinois and their dissertation was called Down on the Farm. And then they list the committee members with Robert Roberts being the chair. And that one's listed first because they'll be graduating in, assuming May 2022, whereas they already got their master's in English and their bachelor's in English and communications. So those will be less recent. Before we get any farther, I did want to mention PAR statements, which is something you might be familiar with. PAR stands for project, action, and result. Your project is your subject, your action is your verb, and your result is why. So these sentences will be placed under the sections of relevant work experience, any volunteerships you've done. It's mostly anything that you want to put further detail into rather than just listing the name, what you achieved, and the date. So in this example here, they have the subject, which is new incoming staff, their action or their verb, which is trained and supervised, and then their result is to ensure consistency of service. So when you put that all together, your action verb will come first, your project or subject will come second, and your result comes last. And it comes together as trained and supervised new incoming staff to ensure consistency of service and adherence to policies, etc. The purpose of these is to describe what kind of situations you were in your previous and current employment and how that experience you gained is relevant to where you're going to be applying to next. We're going to look at a couple of examples. Some are good, some are bad. And if you ever have any questions about these, feel free to interrupt. I can definitely answer them for you. So now we're on relevant experience. As you can see here, what you're going to do is list the title that you held, the organization name, the city and state that that organization was located in, the dates you worked there, and then your PAR statements and the bullet points. And the action verbs come first. So in this particular example, you can see under composition instructor, the person who wrote this only used action verbs for 3 of the 4 bullet points. So it'll be planned, used, and taught. I'm not sure if you guys can see this on your end, the video is blocking mine, but it does show that they still currently work in this position. So when you put your action verbs in, you'll want to make sure that if it's still a job you hold, that the action verbs become present tense. So the correct way to write these would be plan and taught, use instructional technology, and teach in part with an innovative interdisciplinary team. But this is the general layout. You do have freedom to kind of rearrange this section as you see fit. You can group relevant experiences together. So for example, if you're going for a teaching job, you'll want to put your teaching and advising experience all in one category. And then any other experience you'd like to mention that isn't as relevant, you can bring down into another experience section.
Could I interrupt for a couple questions here?
Absolutely.
You know, for people who are in cybersecurity, there's a great deal of crossover from work experience to academic. I mean, the skills that are useful in teaching may not be from a classroom environment. Like the example you're showing here, this person, I'm going to be a little facetious about this, but they've never worked for a living. They've always taught. And they've never done anything outside of the classroom type environment. Most people in cybersecurity, you know, have decades worth of work experience. And that's the part that I've struggled with, is how to blend, you know, 25 years or 30 years of work experience with teaching experience, which I do have, you know, and to make it reasonable and to, you know, fit it into this format. Because like I said, this one, you know, I've seen a lot of CVs from professors, and they're all, you know, they started out as professors when they were 25 or 30, and they don't have decades worth of experience. How do you deal with that?
So there's a lot of sections we haven't touched on yet that can work in other experience other than teaching into your CV. For your for your situation specifically, that's where the PAR statements become very important. So if you're wanting to go into teaching, but you don't have any teaching experience, the best thing you can do is draw from experiences you've had outside of that and relate them to teaching. So for example, I got started working at the Career Center when I didn't have really any experience working a desk job. I worked in fast food for 5 years, but I dealt with people a lot, and my interactions with people, dealing with customers, dealing with coworkers, translates to that position as well. And I was able to bring that experience, although not specifically relevant, still to the new job position. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. I'll defer until you go through some more sections.
Sounds great. Feel free to interrupt if you have any more or any clarifying things. All right, so this is the next section. This is publications. This isn't necessarily relevant to every single college major. This can be an optional section if publications isn't really part of your educational career per se, or something you're not pursuing, but I wanted to put it in there just in case. So publications are going to deal with your articles, any books or research reports that you've published. You're going to use the format appropriate to your discipline. So if I was in the STEM program, I would want my publications to be an APA format, whereas if I was a communications major, I would want my publications to be an MLA format. And that will go on for any other discipline that will use Chicago, etc. So you have the option here to make it a bibliography. If you feel like the publications you have are relevant to the job that you're going for, I would encourage you to describe what these publications are about in 1 to 2 sentences, just to show, one, that you know your stuff, and 2, to show the employers that you've got a lot of research behind your belt and you know what you're talking about pretty much. The next section is very similar to publications. It's about any presentations you've given, whether oral or on poster. You're just going to mention the titles of your presentations, the name of the organization or event that you gave this presentation to, when it happened, where it happened, and an optional brief description. You'll also want to cite these in the format that is relevant to your academic discipline. So in this example below, they have conference presentations that they gave. The title is Artistic Colloquialism at the Illinois Graduate College Seminar. He was the speaker and organizer, and it was located in Urbana, Illinois in 2022. And they did not include any descriptions, but like I said, that is mostly up to you whether or not you want to include those and if you feel like they're relevant for the position you'd like to apply for. The next section is going to be honors and awards. So if you have received any scholarships, fellowships, assistantships, or any scholastic honors or research awards, this is going to be a good section for you. You can format it in a couple different ways. I'm going to show you one more example of how to format this depending on what kind of information you would like to include. But it's pretty simple. You're just going to list, what award you got, or if it's a scholarship, you'll say who gave you the scholarship, as well as how many years you had the scholarship for. So the first one in this example is the Jacob K. Javits Fellowship, and they've had it from 2021 for 1 year to 2022. And then they also list their summer research grant for the Center for Summer Studies, and they had that grant in the year 2021. This is kind of the end of the required section for your CV. This is where you're going to list your references. 3 to 5 are usually appropriate, but if you have more, that's totally fine. You'll just want to list their name, their position, as well as where they work, with their work phone number and their work email. I discourage you from using any personal contact information, such as a personal email or a personal phone, just for the sake of the people that you want to have reference. So keep that in mind when you're making this list. I do see here in this example that they put the references into 2 columns, which is a great way to save room for you to put more relevant information on your CV without making it too lengthy or having any empty space. So here's the next section. These are the optional sections. These ones are not required to submit a CV. We're going to go over any qualifications or skills, any grants you received, any institutional service, certifications, professional associations, any research, community involvement, as well as educational travel. So I will pause here for just a moment. Does anyone have any questions at all, or are you good for me to keep going? Perfect, I'll keep going. All right, so the qualifications or skills section is pretty self-explanatory for the most part. These skills are mostly going to be technical or hard skills that you want to put in. You don't want to put any soft skills in this section, because a lot of the time for this example specifically, programming languages and other languages that you can speak are very specific skills. It's not something that can generally be translated to other jobs. And these will be really important to search for when you're doing research on the jobs that you're looking for. This section will come into play if they're looking to hire someone who does have experience in using Linux, and you'll want to put that on your CV. The next section is pretty simple. If you ever got any grants for a research project or just a general project that you did, you'll want to put that as what agency gave you the grant, how much it was for, the title, as well as what you use that money for. So this specific example, I like to say that I got a grant from the UCCS Green Action Fund for $5,000. I used this money to implement more sustainable ways of practice at the UCCS campus. So this example also provides a different way to organize these things. So in the first section, they have honors and awards. In the second, they have grants, and then they continue on to publications. So you can separate these things out a little bit if you wanted to, or you can group them all together. Institutional service is pretty much any committees that you served on at your time in university, any student groups you supervise, academic projects that you've assisted with, any positions and offices that you held. This is very similar to the work experience section. You're just going to put your position, where you worked, where that work was located, for how many years, as well as a couple of PAR statements to describe your responsibilities there. And in this one, it is a great example of a couple PAR statements, such as served on university committee to evaluate and propose career services for graduate students. It's a great length for a PAR statement, and it also hits all points. They served on the committee to evaluate career services for graduate students. Certifications is also a section that I feel like is very simple. You're just going to list any relevant certifications and the year you received them. This example here, the person received an OSHA forklift certification in 2014, and then the less recent certification is below, a 2010, and is a CMHS certification. I highly recommend checking to see if any jobs you're applying for require certifications before getting hired, or if they will get you certified once you get hired. That way, if you do have these certifications, they can see that you've already taken that first step, and it'll help the application process go a lot easier, especially for, well, I'm assuming that it'll be really helpful to look for those things if you are going into cybersecurity. So professional associations has a couple of different formats that you can choose from. The first one is any professional service that you've done in national, state, or local organizations. It is very similar, again, to your work experience. You're just going to say your position, where you worked, and when, with your PAR statement. So this first example here shows that they worked from whatever year to present day. They have their present tense action verbs: process, oversee, maintain, conduct, and they describe their time as a managing editor at the Southern Literary Journal. The other option that you can take for professional associations is any memberships that you found yourself in. In this section here, it is very brief. You don't have to put the dates that you were a member of these memberships at all. You can usually just list them out like they did in 2 columns. So a couple examples of memberships would be the Modern Language Association, American Literature Association, and American Studies Association. This particular CV example does come from the same person we looked at who is going for a PhD in English. So keep that in mind with these examples here. And again, we're going to look at any recent or current research. This is also going to be formatted very similarly to work experience, except you have a little more of a lengthy PAR statement with these. You're going to want to make sure you're very detailed with these descriptions, especially if what you researched was relevant to what kind of job you're applying for or the duties that they expect of you. So you're just going to put what your position was during that research. So in this example, they were a research assistant, and then they were a doctoral researcher. Then you also want to talk about where the research was conducted. In this case, it was the Department of English, the University of Illinois. Any research that's still currently being conducted, you can just put the year that you started and the year you expect the research to end. And anything that has been published in the past, you can just put the year of publication or year of completion. So you can see the difference here between doctoral researcher and research assistant. Both of those positions got started, but one of them hasn't been completed quite yet. The next section is pretty much your volunteer experience. So any work you did with a church, any community service organization, or things like that, you can list in a section here. This particular example shows a little bit of a different format, but the information that you need to include is still the same. So where you worked, what your position was, from when, and what you did. And this one's a great example with some good PAR statements as well. Help construct homes for impoverished families in need week by week. And they also include 3 PAR statements that could be relevant to the job they're applying for. This is another area of the CV where you can really tailor it to the position that you're seeking. And this is the last one. This one's very niche, but I wanted to mention it just in case. This is the educational travel section. So if you ever traveled out of the country, either for school credit or for research for a class, you can put this onto your CV. In this example here, the person went to Milan, Italy with Milan World Leaders, and they were a communications program volunteer. You're going to state your purpose of going. So what they did was they worked on a team of 10 volunteers to create marketing materials. They also performed communications tasks, including customer support, answering emails. They distributed flyers to incoming students and answered questions. And they also served as an Italian-English translator. So what this shows is any extra experience or education that you may have obtained out of the country. It kind of gives your CV a little bit of uniqueness in terms of, where you've been and what kind of people you know and what kind of projects you've done. So keep that in mind. If you've ever traveled for an educational purpose at all, you can definitely put that in your CV. So this is towards the end of the presentation. I did want to go over the 7 most common mistakes that people make when writing a CV. The first one, like I emphasized at the beginning, is not doing your research. The point of having a CV as well as a resume is for it to be a living, breathing document. You're not going to submit the same CV for all 7 positions you may be looking for. Each position is looking for different expectations from you, different skills from you, or different duties from you. And you have to make sure that you can tailor that CV to fit all of those in order to show that you're the best candidate for that position. In addition to that, poor readability is one of the most common mistakes people make on a CV. When an employer is looking at a CV and is having a hard time finding the information they need to know about you, that can be really detrimental. So keep in mind that you want your CV to flow very well, you want the format to be consistent, and you want it to be nice and organized. Additionally, this one seems kind of self-explanatory, but not having a professional email for your contact information. A lot of the time you would expect just to put like your school email or, a work email, but some people tend to put personal emails with nicknames on them or possibly inappropriate phrases or lots of numbers, which just does not look professional to employers. So keep that in mind. Always use a school or work email rather than a personal email if possible, or just make sure that your personal email is professional and appropriate. The fourth one definitely surrounds the idea of PAR statements, which is not proving an impact. The point of a PAR statement is to show how you positively evoked change at a company you worked at before or in a situation you found yourself in. So not being able to prove that you made positive change or a positive impact on where you worked doesn't bode very well. Another way to do this is to quantify. So for example, someone in finance can talk about a previous job that they had and say that the efforts they put into working at this company improved profits by 45, 85, 95%. That's how you'd want to quantify PAR statements. Although that isn't always relevant, just keep in mind that the point of a PAR statement is to show that you invoked positive change. Additionally, adding too many cliches to your CV that mostly means soft skills. So like saying that you're a hardworking team player or you're an excellent communicator. Although those are nice general statements, a lot of the time people reviewing your CVs will want to see your hard skills rather than your soft skills. So knowing computer program languages or being certified. Things like that are going to stick out much more than generic skills such as being good at working with other people or using, Microsoft Word, which some jobs will look for that, but that's just an example. This next one is really only relevant to very specific situations. So some job positions will ask for a CV with a page limit, but most of the time that won't happen. I did just want to bring it up to make sure you guys check the job posting before you submit a CV in case they do have a page limit on it. Because a CV that is too long isn't always good if they're asking for something that is 3 pages or less. So the last one is a complicated design. I think that a lot of people see their resume or their CV as a document that is supposed to show their uniqueness, which that's absolutely the purpose, but we don't necessarily want to do it visually. We want to do it with the information we put within the document itself. So using too many font types, too many colors, or kind of distracting format is going to make the design too complicated and too hard to follow. So keep that in mind when you're formatting your CV. Although it may look kind of boring, just remember all of your experience and your education is what makes you unique as a person, and you don't necessarily have to make your resume stand out visually. So this is pretty much the end. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the Career Center. We usually do resume, CV, and cover letter critiques. So if you ever feel unsure about submitting any of these documents to an employer, you can come to us. We can give you a review of it. We can work with you on making any changes you need or telling you it's good to go. Or if you're kind of stuck on even starting one of these documents, we can definitely help you through that process as well. We also do major and career exploration, which is done by our career advisor, Bree Escobedo, who's actually on this call today. She does a lot of exploration within what you can do with your major, what kind of career options that will give you, as well as exploration in what it means to work certain internships or job positions. We also do mock interviews. So if you have an interview coming up and you're a little nervous, we can run through a mock interview with you. Or if you have questions about what to prep for in terms of an interview, we're there for you as well. We also do help with internship and job applications. So if you need some more resources to expand your job search, we have a lot that we can provide for you, and we can help you walk through it as well. And we also have Clyde's Closet, which is a free clothing closet where you can come and get business casual to business professional attire completely free, no charge. And you can take up to 7 items a year without having to return them. So you can wear these forever if you want. But other than that, that's pretty much the end. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. I'm here to try my best to answer them.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions? That was a lot of information.
Well, I just want to ask, Greg, did you feel that you had your question answered, or would you still like to talk about how to integrate your industry experience? Okay, well, if anyone else has a question, that's fine then.
Kenar, I know you said that you were available to help review and give feedback. What are some of the other things that can help folks out that may be on this call as resources or documents that they can maybe look at as references too?
Definitely. So I believe I have access to 3 example CVs that I used throughout the presentation. I have those links to them on the last slide, so I can send those in the chat for you guys if you'd like. I also referenced apa.gov, which gives a lot of tips for writing a CV in case you don't want to sit through the presentation again. That's where I got a fair amount of information, so I can send that to you as well. But most of all, I recommend taking your time. I think that people tend to rush and they panic because they feel like they need to have the document ready to go at, 10 minutes later, when, this is a document that really shows all of your accomplishments. And I think you should take the time to review that and really see on paper how much you've done and how important that is both for you as well as for your future career. So I'll send those right now, but if anyone has any questions, I can definitely talk while I do that.
Karen, I want to offer up as well. We at the Cybersecurity Program Office have access to lots and lots of professionals that can go through and help you with this in the education arena. And so they know what's competitive. They're hiring managers at different schools. And so if you're interested in that as well, we would love to get some hands-on from some faculty across the Centers of Academic Excellence to give you feedback as well. And we're happy to facilitate that for you.
Definitely, that sounds great.
Any other questions, concerns, anything anyone wants to discuss? Well, I think we're all here as a resource for you. So if there's anything that we can do, I will put my contact information in the chat and happy to connect with anyone if needed. Please let me know how we can help. We're here to support you and help you with this journey. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.